Welcome into this week's edition of Wolves Weekly. My name is John Potter, the Director of Athletic Media and External Relations here at WU. And if you've ever had the inkling of running fast or throwing things for a long distance, we have a treat for you today as head track and field coach Mike Johnson joins us for a talk. We'll also hit on all the road events coming up for Western Oregon Athletics in the Wolves Weekly Rally. But first, here's Mike Johnson on this week's Wolves Weekly. And we welcome into the Wolves Weekly set the head coach of the cross country and track and field programs here at Western Oregon. That is Mike Johnson. Mike, welcome to Wolves Weekly.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's talk about the cross country season, since that came and went in the fall.
Yeah, a couple months ago.
He was there, as were most of us, and a great start of the season, especially individually for guys like
Rivich, who was three-time, I think, GNAC Athlete of the Week here in cross country. And then decided, for those people who know what Shady is, decided to run a little too fast on that one day. Went, 49 something, and laid him up for about 10 days. A good individual season. Collectively, we had some great races, but not at the time we wanted. The conference was really good for the men, not so good for the women. Regionals was really good for the women, not so good for the men. So without that, we need to be able to advance to nationals. Always our goal. That didn't happen. But boy, did we set the table for some things to come with a great group of young guys. I think we lose maybe none of our men, one of our women, and everybody comes back next year more experienced. The youth showed a little bit, but we've got, just because they don't ask what your class standing is at the finish line.
Correct.
So we're pretty pleased with a lot of it, a lot of individual accomplishments, set us up great for track season. And so when we leave the regional meet, we want to be going to nationals, but since we're not, it's track season. So that's where we are now.
And transitioning into track season, you announced in November the hiring of Octavius Gillespie-Bennett as the associate head coach for the track and field program. Take us through the process. What prompted the hire, and what kind of intangibles does Coach Gillespie-Bennett bring to Western Oregon?
Well, to start with the intangibles, all of his intangibles are probably tangible. They are. I mean, you can measure the success he's had. You can measure the attitude he brings. Sure. You can measure the presence that he has. He comes in. Do you measure it, or is it just palpable? Do you feel it? Octavius was the head coach at Cal Poly Pomona for cross country and track, and we've known each other for quite a while. And that's not kind of how we made the hire. Ben Stinson left and took another job, and so we had a vacancy.
Sure.
And lo and behold, I got a phone call, and there we were. And the rest, we rolled forward. We had a selection process, but ultimately Octavius stood out, and we're fortunate enough to have him join us here. In large part, I think he really likes the community, really likes Western Oregon, and in a great measure, this, I think, he felt was a better place for him to raise his family. His wife is a well-accomplished professional. It's a good place for them both to enjoy employment, and we're really happy he's here. He started at UCLA, and then went to Tulsa, and then Cal State LA, and then the head coach then at Cal Poly Pomona. So he's got a great resume and good work behind him.
All good locations to build the pedigree, and of course bring it here to Monmouth and the program here at Western Oregon. Mentioned it's track season, indoor first for the months of January and February, and you opened this past weekend in Seattle at the UW Indoor Preview. I want to kind of highlight different disciplines and talk about some of the names that had some good weekends. First, in the jumps, you had redshirt freshman from the football team, but jumping for you, Alani Troutman had a decent
true freshman.
True freshman.
Yeah,
redshirt for the football team, didn't play.
And I think the more remarkable part about Alani was the fact that he came into the meet. He lives in Redmond, Oregon. And if you've been in Redmond, Oregon this winter, he hadn't seen the ground for about 5 weeks. And then he got here, and he only got to see the ground for 2 days, like the rest of the team. And so Alani did a great job for us in that meet. And in a First time indoors, elevated runway, totally different situation than he'd ever competed in before. Showed a lot of poise and a lot of potential.
Second among D2 jumpers in the long jump and finished behind the guy who was the runner-up in the GNAC championships last year.
Sure. Early in the season, we got a lot of work to do, but we're really enthused with the start for him and the other people too. I think, you're looking at a number of the people who had 3 school records broken, and we can talk about that. What are your thoughts?
We definitely will. Stand by on those. Let's
Yeah.
go from the jumps to the throws, and it seems like throws a part of the program now that Octavius is going to be a major part of, and
helping supervise, and along with Matt Scrivers, and nice returning group, and some freshmen too.
Talk about Rachel Huffman and her performance this weekend.
Well, Rachel Huffman's remarkable in the fact that she throws very well in the weight. It's not her primary event. She's probably a better discus javelin thrower, but if you want to throw those indoors, you got to find a really big building with nobody around. And so she, competed very well in the weight, as did Keegan Allen, who did a fine job, and we're making progress there, and we're kind of excited about those people.
Personal best for Huffman in the weighted throw on the female side,
Absolutely.
which was a kind of prevailing trend for the entire meet as we go to the sprints. Talk about some of the newcomers in the shorter distance on the men's side, namely the sophomore Cody Blodgett and Anthony Mendez.
Well, interesting. They had kind of a little athletic faux pas, is they got in the meet, and they forgot to go down and check to see that they made finals, and they'd actually not. They made semifinals, and they had, but did not show at that point. So that will live, for their careers. Good starts. Good to see. Cody, is a transfer from Eastern Oregon. He has some experience. Anthony, boy, all these guys have had so little competitive experience that, they're making progress. And we're kind of excited to see where we can be in 4 or 5 weeks. Really excited to see where we can be in May.
Go to the 400, and we bring in a name that's familiar to Western Oregon track fans, and that's Aaron Whitaker, who had an 8th place finish in that event, 4th among D2 runners. Where's Aaron coming into this week in comparison and looking forward to what's coming up?
I think a good thing about Aaron is that he's obviously he was actually able to train over the break, but in Colorado Springs, where he'd spent spent that time. But he was working all alone. And he came into this race, and again, we hadn't hit the track but twice because there was snow on it. And so he looked very strong. Good close, looked great. Foot speed's not quite where it will be, but he and a group of other guys are going to be, if you take Aaron and A.J. Holmberg, who, ended up second on the 600 list. Off of this performance, and we don't know what AJ can do. He can run the hurdles, run the 800, run the 400. So all that contributes to both those guys are going to be big relay contributors.
And AJ's okay. He didn't get caught up in that tussle behind him.
Yeah, no, the part that if you saw it on those people that saw it on Flow Track saw a young man from that's a very distinctive logo on his shirt from Pac 12 school in Eastern Washington, but we won't name it, involved in a real shove. It made the national hit list, basically. But AJ had broken clean, and he was in the lead. He led from the start. He led to the finish. Yeah.
Safe is what we'll go with.
Safe is what it was.
Let's move into some distance, and you mentioned 3 school records. We'll hit that in just a second, but one thing you can't say very often, unless you've got just spectacular runners and discipline and whatever it is someone who has the top time in the country after 1 week. And you now have that with Josh Dempsey in the 800.
Yeah, Josh Dempsey, who he run faster in there than 155. He took 4 seconds off of his best time in Dempsey, not his best indoor time. So Josh, not only takes that, but he comes onto the list, higher up the list, moved himself up the list here from indoors. We now have 6 of the top 10 GNAC times in the 800. As a matter of fact, the number 6 guy is from Western Oregon, but he's 7th on our 800 list. So it was a pretty good shot. Josh took the lead, probably hesitated a little bit at 600, but really, great improvement. I think Josh expects to take a lot of time off of what we saw.
Again, being the first week, it's a preview. It's
Well,
exactly
yeah,
what you want to see. But
yeah,
being number 1 in the country is nice.
Yeah, it's a preview. It's the first week of January, but we did have 2 weeks in December on the East Coast. So he's able to, or in the Midwest, so we're able to go past those.
You mentioned the 3 school records. We'll first start on the women's side with the 1,000 and Susie Vandegrift, a record that you said prior to the meet in conversation with me that she had a really good chance of breaking, and she shattered it as the only D2 runner on that women's race, and the first Western Oregon female runner to go sub 3 minutes. Talk about Vandegrift's run in the 1,000.
Well, for a woman that came out of high school in the 100 and the 200, and that has never raced on the track longer than an 800, yeah, it was pretty good. She closed very quickly on the last 200, and once she gets a grip on the race, that'll be a very good race for her. And now, this next time out, she'll probably lead off our distance medley relay, where she gets to run the 1,200, which again will be further than she's run on the track.
Kind of extending her out like a pitcher in spring training. Just keep stretching her out in distances.
Yeah. We want her to be able to finish better than most pitchers finish in October, though.
That's true. Go more than 6 or 7 innings
Yeah.
like the old-time pitchers who would go the complete game. On the flip side, on the men's side, 1,000, Dustin Nading comes in and clips the record that David Ribich put up last year in the indoor season. A guy that you were excited to bring in for cross country now is already showing up some good records in the indoor track and field season.
He was the GNAC newcomer in the GNAC conference meet in cross. It's from Longview. And, I just expected him to run a great 1,000, and he did. He'll learn more. Again, we didn't have the pacing down correctly on that, but it showed that he can run the 8, run the 15,000. He'll probably run a 1,200 coming up in this DMR in the next meet. Run a 1,200 and come back the next day now, and likely run a mile.
210,
yeah, on the double.
0.2 of a second better than Ribich. He 228.5 his time now with extended training and kind of the pacing issues. How low can Nading take that record?
It's interesting because it's what do we train for? Whether he's training for the 15 or training for the 8.
Sure.
If he's training for the 8, it won't take as long to get to 223. If he's training to the 15, maybe we go 223 anyhow. Yeah.
We'll see as the season
We'll see
progresses.
Well, that won't be this year. That'll be the only 1,000 he gets to run this year.
All right.
Just busy schedule.
Speaking of that Ribich kid who we've mentioned in cross country and also with his record being clipped in the 1,000, he decided that he wanted a record back and he took it in the 3,000, which to say that he shattered would be taking it lightly. A record that was set in 1993, he shattered it by 16 seconds and broke his indoor PB by about 23 seconds that he did 2 years ago.
About 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago in 2015. Yeah. A 3,000 race where he was in a field with the Olympic gold medalist in the 1,500, Matthew Centrowitz.
And a world champion of 1,500.
Kind of big race and was spectacular in the 3,000.
Yeah, they went out quickly. They're 60.3 or 60.4 at the first 400, which I think put a lot of weight in the legs of much of the field.
Yeah.
So the middle of the race became a little bit irregular. We got back. His last 1,000 was pretty good. The final 200 was really quite good. But that's experience that you get when you get in a race that you know is going to go 750. And I knew the race was going to go 750 because I talked to the people that were going to go 750 before they, or the coaches at least before it happened, and they ran it understanding that Central West probably go 730, but this is part of his training.
Yeah.
But one of the things we work very hard at Western Oregon is to get people exposure to top-level competition so that if you come here and you're able to put yourself in a position to be one of those people that should run in those races, you get the opportunity.
Yeah.
We work hard at it, and our athletes strive for it.
Indoor season very heavily up in Seattle, up at Dempsey Indoor. You're there in a couple of weeks for another event hosted by UW. You're there a couple of weeks after that in preparations for what should be another competitive GNAC championship in Nampa. How having that kind of world-class facility up 4 hours north is it important? How important is it to have that facility 4 hours north to prepare for the
It's
GNAC
not just critical for us, it's critical for everybody on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Which brings to mind the fact that we've got some land right here in Monmouth, and if we could get the money, we could build a world-class facility right here and change Monmouth independence.
Mike Johnson Indoor Facility. I like the ring of it.
No, I think there's other people that we could name that after, John. But we really value indoors. A year ago, they had the indoor track in Portland that was the World Championship track that moved back to Iowa. It made things so much better for the whole state. We need another track here. Washington does a great job. We have a great relationship with those people. They do a very good job with their meet. And, we are appreciative that that facility is there.
You challenged me before we sat down for this interview to grill you with a tough question, so I'll ask you the same one that I asked earlier, but expect a different answer. Is what is the meaning of life?
John,
You wanted the tough question.
A meaning of life. I don't know. Meaning of life, I think I kind of told you earlier. When we come onto this planet, we have the responsibility. We have the responsibility to live out our DNA. Each person needs to make the planet better when they leave. We know when we come, we know we're going to leave. And so that's our job. The meaning of life is we just do a good job and treat people right and say the right things, and so don't say a lot of mean things, and try to find something that's good. I don't have a meaning of life. I'm not at that pay grade.
Not just a great coach, but a thinker, and I like that.
Scratch my head a lot.
Sometimes it's great thoughts, sometimes it's ones that'll make you laugh, but we always enjoy the time. Coach Mike Johnson, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll be right back with the Wolves Weekly Rally right after this on Wolves Weekly. Again, our thanks to the venerable Mike Johnson for joining us here on Wolves Weekly. Let's transition into this week's schedule. This week's edition of the Wolves Weekly Rally starts right now. The theme of the week: basketball on the road. Our women's basketball team will start out this week Thursday playing at Central Washington University. They'll head to Ellensburg for the first meeting of the year with the Wildcats. That's scheduled for a 7 p.m. tip-off from the Nicholson Pavilion up in Ellensburg. They'll complete the weekend over in Nampa as they take on Northwest Nazarene. That is Saturday, January the 21st, a 2 p.m. Mountain tip. That's 1 o'clock for us here in the Pacific time zone. We'll have live stats and video all available online at woowolves.com. The men also on the road. They begin a 4-game road trip over the next 2 weeks up in Alaska as they'll take on the University of Alaska Anchorage on Thursday night, the 19th, and then complete the weekend up in Fairbanks, taking on the Nanooks of Alaska on the 21st. That's Saturday. Both games will tip off at 7 p.m. Alaskan, 8 p.m. here in the Pacific time zone. Of course, stats and video at woowolves.com. Speaking of woowolves.com, it's your one-stop shop for everything Western Oregon athletics. You can get game recaps, previews, stats, and feature stories, as well as all the links to all of our social media, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, where you can find Wolves Weekly, all on woowolves.com. With that, we thank Mike Johnson again for joining us for this week's episode of Wolves Weekly. We'll catch you next week as we'll get you all up to date with basketball on the road and preview more of the indoor track and field season. Until then, I'm John Potter. Thanks for watching Wolves Weekly, and until next week, go Wolves.